welcome back to another episode of the Cyber Queens. We are so excited to have you with us. We are very excited for this week's topic. It is sort of a continuation off of last week's topic. So if you're with us last week, then you'll know that we were talking about a little bit of the spicy actions we've seen around people being laid off or people having to quit, and do they dox their former employers? That means to publicly humiliate them, or do they kind of not do that? So this week, last week we had Mimi, who we're here with today, the cybersecurity matchmaker Mimi. She gave her 0.2 Bitcoin essentially at the end of the episode on that whole post immediate layoff emotional reaction thing, and we just had to have her on to tease her full-length episode, which is today. So Mimi, welcome to the Cyber Queens. Please tell us all about yourself.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be back and in nicer hair without my big coat, and I do miss the art behind me. That was really fun.
That was so fun. It's like the most culture we've ever had on the Cyber Queens. It was very exciting.
I've never gone live with, a naked statue behind me before. It was like a bucket list kind of thing. So it was great.
It's perfect. It's perfect. By the way, Stacey will be with us shortly. Stacey had a doctor's appointment this morning. She got in last minute on a cancellation. It's important to prioritize your health, even if you have a weekly cyber podcast that you do, especially as the busy tech professionals that we are. So we will see her in just a second.
And by the way, letting doctors know that you will take any cancellation is one of the best ways to get into doctors that you're having a hard time getting into.
It is. Otherwise, she would have had to wait quite a few months to get this very urgent appointment that she needed. So, always prioritize your health out there.
Yeah, of course.
In fact, I think I hear her coming in shortly.
Cool. So I actually didn't get a chance to intro myself. So I'll do that quickly.
Oh yeah, do that, please.
So excited to talk about. Hey, Stacey. I was so excited to have a little trip down memory lane to the National Gallery. But I'm so glad to be here with both of you. I am the cybersecurity matchmaker. Years and years of advocating for people with hiring managers and wrestling it out with hiring managers, sometimes really getting their perspective and understanding where they're coming from, sometimes really being successful at putting people through who they initially didn't want to continue with. So after years of doing that, my practice has evolved into job search and hiring strategist. And so that's what I do. And also part of that ends up being resume writing. So I would always be like, I don't have anyone to send you to. This resume is horrible, but sorry. Maybe go find someone famous who might use AI.
And try again. So the type of matchmaker that you are is between applicant and job.
Actually, that's a very good clarification. So yes, so the resume writing aside, I now am the person I refer people to write resumes because I realize that I love it. And the matchmaking is really interesting. It used to mean recruiter, because that was what I did 100% for a living. And I loved using that terminology because that was my approach to recruiting. Today, but I was always matching people up. It is actually an orientation. I have discovered this because I'm a crazy networker. And actually today I get to celebrate with you ladies, 20,000 followers. So that happened this morning.
Holy hot damn! You're up there with Amber. Amber passed 22. I'm like, dang, y'all are putting me to shame over here.
I can show you how to do that. There are strategies to make people more likely to do that acceleration with you. And that's definitely something that I've worked on and invested in so passionately over the past 7 years that I've embarked on this LinkedIn journey. So yeah, I was excited to be able to celebrate that. I was like waiting for it to happen. It was like crawling along at the end. I was like, it's got to happen before I hop on the show. Come on.
That would be so cool to say out there.
Oh, it did.
In recorded universe.
But the matchmaking, through my years of connecting with people, and, I would say that obviously I have not connected personally with every one of my 20,000 followers, but a lot, like a shocking amount. And one of the things that I found is that there are certain people who just love to connect others to each other. It's like a high you get from two people who should know each other coming together through you. And if you have it, you know it. So I've just found that out. So
like all the people who said Stacey and I should be friends for years before we
those people go back, you track those people. Those are the people who are oriented towards being connectors. And I've met a lot of people over the years, and it's like, you know them when you meet them. It's just so weird. It's like there's no reservation. It's like, I got to introduce you to this person. It's almost like this like compulsion. So now that I'm not solely a recruiter and really not a recruiter at all, I really am a matchmaker. So I always was just getting people together all the time. By the way, it sometimes gets inappropriate when I start giving like advice about job searching, and I use so many dating metaphors that people start asking me if I'll coach them for dating.
You're like, that's the wrong type of matchmaking.
But what you do here is what you do everywhere. So that is an important piece of probably even what you can get out of what we'll talk about today. Because what you do in job search, what you do in, if you want to get the best job search like tip book, He's Just Not That Into You. Because it's literally, it works better for job search than it does with dating, because dating's like crazy. So it's actually like, if you want to take all those principles and apply them to a job search, so much better.
No, it's true. I have people who constantly, and like I always say, like, if you need help, DM me, set up some time with me. And there are some people who've taken me up on that. I mentor a lot of folks one-to-one, half hour at a time. And like Mimi was saying, you know, some of them find out they're interested in GRC, and I'll refer them to like ISOs I know. Some of them are interested in detection engineering. I'm not a detection engineer, so I'll refer them to other people I know. Chances are I know someone in whatever vertical you want to work in that I'll get you over to. But some people who are just like, hi, ma'am, I'm looking for a job in cyber. Here's my resume. Please let me know of anything. I'm like, bro, would you walk up to me off the street in New York? We just pass each other. You're like,
first.
Go out with me. And I'm like, why? Why would I do that? Like, you got to preface. You got to give some context. I got to get to know you before I even want to put myself out there and refer you to anything.
Exactly. You know, and it's not like, you know, with sales, there's the idea of like, oh, you got to give value to get value. No, it's not just about giving value. It's actually just the connection. Make a real connection with me, and I'm just naturally going to want to introduce you to people. But yeah, I've had people write me these like, hey, I saw you know this person. Here's why I want you to just go up to them and advocate for me to get that job. And I'll be like, okay, first of all, we haven't spoken in a long time. So yes, let's.
But opposite of that, if I have a constant connection, not even someone I talk to all the time, met you at Black Hat last year, we kind of kept in touch here, there. Hey, congrats on this. Hey, that was so cool. Congrats on that milestone. You're like, hey, I'm interviewing currently or want to interview at this company. You know, do you think I would be? And I'm like, oh, I would love to link you up with someone who works there so you can like mutually. It's like, if you're someone I know well or even know a little bit about, and I can qualify that opportunity both ways, I will happily make that introduction for you.
So it is an amazing intro, by the way, into, okay, what happens? You're laid off. Because that's when you start, you can panic a bit. And we talked about this last week, like panic, sadness, anger, let those feelings come, write them on a piece of paper, rip up that paper, throw it in the trash, burn it. Don't send it to anyone.
Don't let anyone see it.
At least that continues to be my position, is don't dox the company, because you have so much gold in that hurt and pain. Use it. Don't just throw it back and let it go, you know, feathers in the wind. So yeah, like get all that out. And then the next few things to do have to do with what we're talking about. So let's say you want to now aggressively get people to like refer you into jobs. The first thing you need to do is the post. So is it okay?
Yeah, the post. We all know about the post.
Can we talk about the post first? Because
we need to talk about the post.
The post.
Obligatory topic.
Obligatory. So
the post we're referring to.
And I come with receipts. So I do come with a little anecdotal data. So it's not just me talking opinion. I will always be very transparent about the fact that I'm obsessed with anecdotal data that I can feel and touch, rather than great big studies that some unknown person had an agenda and paid a lot of money to get done. So my data sets are quite smaller than maybe like the dependable, you know, surveys that are done. But once something happens to 4 or 5 people, don't you think, I mean, that's something. So I have more than 4 or 5 people, but LinkedIn will promote that first post insanely. They do. I always call LinkedIn like that, like old auntie who really wants to help. So they're doing what they can, but sometimes they don't totally understand your world. And so sometimes like what they're offering, you take what you can benefit from and then you leave the rest. So they offer you that initial post to announce that you've been laid off and to get that wonderful, beautiful color green banner that goes so well with everyone's skin color.
It doesn't.
No, it doesn't.
They only could have made it worse if they made it yellow. That would have been.
They could, yes. I think very few ways they could have made that color worse. But so now there's all these like I get shouted at by also other job search coaches who say, don't tell people that the banner is not good. The banner is fine. The banner is LinkedIn's way of offering you a tool when you need it to let the world know that you're looking. So the data that I have is that right when you post it, you're getting many more views on that post. The few days after, sometimes even the week after, depending on how you are actually personally promoting it and how you have gotten your network to promote it. So it can actually be an amazing, powerful tool in that first few days or week and a half, 2 weeks. Beyond that, and what I've seen is somebody with 5,000 connections get like 10,000 views.
Okay.
So that's some of the data.
So it multiplies for you.
Multiply. I'm looking for the right word for something that multiplies very quickly, but it's not coming.
Bunny rabbit.
Exponential.
It's that was
Stacey bunny rabbit.
Exponential.
Mimi, I'm curious, is there anything specifically in that post that needs to be said or mentioned or formatted in a certain way to really get LinkedIn to notice and be like, oh, that's their post. I need to promote this.
And I have a second question. You can answer them at the same time. Is that a mutually exclusive process? So if I throw up my green banner, is it automatic like a job promotion where it's like make a post to your network and it correlates the two?
Exactly.
Or you throw it up and you could wait a few days to make
So it's some algorithm that's associated with when you actually turn the banner on.
So that moment you toggle that switch is important. Okay.
Exactly. So So now I also want to say not everybody is ready to do it the first day, the first 2 days.
No.
Now I say stay in pajamas for 3 or 4 days. But you could stay private for longer. And I want to also say that reaching out privately initially to close connections on the phone, on a text, people that you have that relationship with is your number one first step. Because and it just goes back to what we were talking about. It has to be personal. And there is a sadness and a despair that can creep in and make you feel entitled to others helping you. But if you've been laid off, this is your message from the universe to really find the ways that you haven't been helping yourself and do those properly and do them well. And one of those is networking. And networking is not something that anyone has promised you they would do for you. No matter how, and I will say this from somebody who connects tons of people. I'm always connecting people. And when I need something from somebody, I never expect it. It's not because I'm not valuing what I do, but I understand that making those connections, making those networking with others and putting yourself out there, that is a big ask. And just because I get a high from it and I'm happy to do it so much, I'm very sensitive to the fact that not everybody's like that. And when I would like a connection from somebody, I try to make it as easy as possible for them. So, for example, I have very bad ADHD. So I've learned about myself that you give me a task that's one step, I'll do it in literally faster than anyone could ever do it. If you give me a step that has 2 steps, like a favor or something I need to do for you that has 2 steps, and that first step is annoying or takes some energy.
Or browser tab, if I have to open up a new browser tab.
Okay, yeah, there's varying levels of this. But I'm at the extreme for sure. But we're talking about, I need to now think. Okay, I got to think. That's a thing. And I care about this person. I want to make that introduction nice. They're asking me to introduce them to somebody, and I want to make sure it matters. And I want to say something like special and real. Guess where that's going? It's going to the bottom of my list, to the top of my guilt. And now you're associated with guilt.
God.
You're associated with guilt and love all combined. I'm afraid now to get your next text. Have you done it yet? And now I try not to be avoidant, but the instinct to avoid is going to kick in. So that's just a little window into my brain.
No, Stacey said that to me the other day. She was like, because you know how people are like, oh, that's so fun. Yeah, I'm going to do that right away. I'm going to get that too. And then they just don't.
Right. And it's not because they don't care. It's not because they don't care. It's actually because they care more than you realize. And so what you can do to help is you can actually say, here, I just prepared a 2-line thing, kick it into an email, shoot it over with both of our emails in the and here's the subject line and intro, blah, blah, blah. And here's why I want to meet them. And this is a pretty good reason. And it's going to make you look good. And here it is. Can you just do this today?
Yeah. So I'm going to recap for the listeners. So the original ask was, what do we include in that first open to work post? I am searching for work.
We meander.
Yeah. So Mimi has said, sometimes you don't go to the post right away. Sometimes you reach out privately first, and that's okay. This is actually true. I actually find myself in this situation. One of my first coworkers in InfoSec ever, in that April of 2019, the architect, he just found himself laid off. And I was one of his first reach outs. He's like, you're doing so well. And he's like, I wonder if you would help an old guy. And I'm like, of course I will. I never forgot all the help you gave me. You taught me IP addressing back in the day. I never forgot that. But I was like, okay, first things first, go back to where you got laid off from, especially if it was good partings, and it was, and ask for recommendations. I understand I'm laid off, but can you give me a LinkedIn recommendation? Can you just write me a quick email recommendation? Like, get that good feedback from those people to take with you. And I was like, next we need to talk about the post. Like, you should probably do a post, but we want to do this strategically and intelligently. So we actually haven't gotten there yet. So he reached out to me and I advised him on the post and to get the recs. Cool. And I was like, if you have to bullet point it for people, just a quick recommendation on what it was like working with me, how I did on this cloud migration project, blah, blah, blah. Or I was like, heck, write it for them and just say, well, you copy and paste this into a LinkedIn recommendation if you agree with most of what I wrote for you. That's awesome. And then we got to the post. Yeah.
That's perfect. So you just summarized, and because you did promise me it'd be casual, so I'm letting my mind meander. So I hope it's okay.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I just want to.
I love the way you said it. No, I love the way you framed that out, because let's say you're just joining right now. First thing, be sure to get those recommendations. I mentioned that, and you mentioned that. It is the most important thing right off the bat. It's the most valuable thing you can get. You have it forever, unless you do something terrible and then they take it back. But that would
or they nuke their LinkedIn and it's like that user doesn't exist anymore. Although I'm pretty sure you'll still keep it. Maybe. I don't know, but you can snap it. I have screenshots on my website. So you can snap it. It is forever. So that's number one. Number two, I would argue this, but I would say take the time before you do the post and the banner to do what we're talking about now, which is that really personal interactions. Think about people you have done favors for, like what Meryl just said. He taught her something. He taught you something. Yeah, almost 5 years ago. And I ran into him at Reinforce this year, but we don't talk all the time. He doesn't, we don't get coffee, even though we are not in the same town anymore. He moved away. But I haven't heard from him in so long, but we had such a good foundational relationship that when he does come to me out of the blue, I know he's not just using me. He's like, hey, remember me? Like, I could really use some help. And I'm like, I will absolutely do that for you.
Yes, 100%. And I think that's a beautiful story, by the way, because if you're a good person, you will not forget the people that paved your path. And there's no shame to call in favors. Favors are like a bank account, you got to call those in sometime.
Another example that people might not think of or anticipate is one of the people who served as a bridge between one job and another for me was a account executive at one of the vendors that, I used their product in my cybersecurity team. And so this is a person who knows what's going on and what teams are hiring and what teams need at multiple companies, and was able to get me introduced to someone for an opportunity that was never posted. It was never posted. It was never promoted. It was never out there in the world. But because I said, hey, this just happened to me and now I'm looking, they were able to, go through the back door, talk to the other person and say, hey, this person is now available. She's great. Do you want someone like her on your team? You better, scoop her up.
That's great. Yeah. And so that's always the first place to go. And I do think people don't go there. I think people go straight to the post. And I think that it makes sense to take that first little space to go back to those people that you think will personally help you. So that's kind of the setup to the banner. Now, once you have the banner on, I just wanted to share that a number of people, I would say the anecdotal data here is about like 25 people who I've seen that they have kind of sunk into a little bit of despair because it is going to take a little longer these days to find the right thing. And having that banner on you at every interaction, every time you're reaching out to somebody, it can actually wear you down. Mm-hmm. And I definitely, and it's not about how others view you as much as really a self-identity. So that's kind of where I think I add a little bit of something extra that I haven't heard a lot of other people talk about with the green banner is the weariness that it can and despair that it can actually contribute to your own identity as a person who's not employed right now.
Is that because
it's a reminder every day?
Yeah. Exactly. Is that because you kind of get your hopes up a little, like, ooh, a new avenue, ooh, a new piece of hope, and if it fizzles out, you're like, oh.
No, I actually think it's like when you're interacting, let's say in a conversation, or you're reaching out to somebody for no reason whatsoever, that's the first thing they see. So it's kind of like, it's not something that you're ashamed of it. It's just that you have so much more to you. You're not just unemployed. You could be baking sourdough. Like I always recommend baking sourdough when you're doing it.
You did.
Great. Find something that you're doing that you feel proud of. But I'm saying you have a family, you have parents, children, partners, you have a life and hobbies. You're so much more than being unemployed. And that's the first thing people will see.
No, it's true though, because if you go to a cyber meetup, let's say you are unemployed or laid off and you are trying to go to a con to like get some networking opportunities, how networking goes at a cyber con is, hi, I'm Meryl. Who are you? Hi, I'm Stacy. Oh, cool. What do you do? Oh, I'm a head of incident response. What about you? Oh, I'm a senior pen tester. This is so fun. And the first thing we do is say our jobs. It's like our identity in cyber. It's like are you one of the OffSec people or are you one of the DipSec people? But you're right. We should reframe that to like, oh, like, my name is Meryl. I'm a big advocate for diversity in cyber. I work in AppSec. These are my passions. These are my platforms, things. But we don't. We say our jobs.
Very interestingly, I would say there's nothing wrong with overly identifying with your job because it is a huge part of who you are. But when you're unemployed, you still are that OppSec person. You still are that. Exactly. You could be amazing at that. You could be the OppSec, DevSec. Queen. I mean, you could be the best at it and you were caught in a layoff. So even I want to push back on that just a tiny bit because I like the idea that your job could really connect deeply with your personality. So, but it's the unemployed identification that I think really pulls people down. And so I do recommend playing around with that tool that LinkedIn gives you. There's no reason you don't even have to announce every time you put it back on because it gives you the option to do that. You can take it off, put it back on, see how you feel, experiment with it, but definitely experiment with taking it down after you see that initial post stop getting traction.
So you don't think that looks bad? Like, oh, it's up. I'm available. Just kidding. I got a job. No, it's a backup. I need a job. Just kidding. I don't need a job again.
Nobody's watching you. Nobody's like watching your LinkedIn. Like every day I'm going to pull up Meryl's LinkedIn and see what the status is. Nobody's watching you. And that's the beauty of it. And you got to like step outside that everyone's watching me thing, but nobody's watching. So yeah. And there's no lack of integrity there to take it down. Of course, you can leave it open for recruiters. I want to say that like loud and clear. Leave it open for recruiters. Yes. Take it down, experiment with taking it down, put it back up if you feel like it was helping.
Love that. I love that. And okay, so if you do make the post, what do you recommend including? How do you recommend maximizing that SEO that LinkedIn is going to share you to everybody so that you can really capitalize on people seeing it and like calls to action they can do for you?
So like I said, same thing with the recommendation earlier, make it as easy as possible for people to imagine where you want to be. So the hardest posts I've seen are posts where the person doesn't really know what the next step looks like. So that's why I recommend taking the time to really think about, okay, I was just hit really hard. Is there a direction or a nuance, a pivot, even a honing of what I'm doing next that you can share in that post? There's an element of graciousness to the previous employer if you want. Obviously, that's totally not necessary, but some people, I see a lot of people do that. But being specific about what people can do for you is the greatest gift to yourself and to others who really want to help you. Is that good?
Yeah,
Anything else? I think if there's
no, what so as kind of the user experience, when I see posts like that, so I'm like, I want to know, like you said, help me help you, right? So if you're coming to me and like asking for a rec into a specific job where I know somebody or at my org or something, say, hey, interested in this job, these are my skills, this is my resume, this is how I think I could add value. In your post, say, hey, looking for these types of positions, preferably in these industries or these sectors, or working for an org like this, or I liked the work I did, or I didn't like the work I did. I'd like to transition into something different. So if you know of anyone willing to take someone with my experience but train them up on this new capability, think of me. I'm like, great, that tells me what to be on the lookout for. And now I know my call to action is first, comment for better reach, because I will always do that for you, because then my audience becomes your audience. But also I'm like, I proactively know. And if I see those job opportunities, people are like, hey, I'm hiring on my team. I'm like, I will tag you, because that comes to my recall. So for me, again, help me help you. Put in your post what you're looking for, how you serve, or the move you'd like to make, or, what type of individuals you'd like to be connected with. And I think that's how 100%. You can help me make the most of your open to work post, for sure.
100%. So yeah, and that can be 2 weeks in. I've seen people do it a month in. I mean, it just depends on the urgency, that you have, or the traction you're getting with your personal connections. But try personal connections first. It's not a replacement for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, definitely trying to get to a point where your mindset has shifted from that scarcity mindset of, oh, I lost my job, I'm unemployed, I'm never going to find another position, I had such a good thing going, or, just all of that kind of like that fixed scarcity fear base, like just that can seep into how you communicate, and you might not even notice it, right? But like trying to bring more awareness to that, and then trying to shift your mindset and shift the way you're communicating to excitement and possibilities, and how you being involved can really raise up other people, can make such a difference in inspiring people to want to help you, right? And I think that kind of goes into another question or segment that we have here is like, okay, so let's say you have in a way exhausted all of the people you immediately know and have connections with, right? Now how do you go beyond that to best represent yourself to people who you may not have known previously and now are starting to come across in your job search?
So that's a great question. Now, one of the things you can do is take advantage of your 100 LinkedIn invites per week. And when you're unemployed, like, you have time. So make sure 1 week doesn't go by without you reaching out to 100 people. You don't have to write a thoughtful note. If you are the type of person, if you're looking for the right people, they'll want to connect with you. So one thing that I would recommend is starting your connections with people who might be your hiring manager, because do not underestimate how happy a company is when somebody finds their own candidate for a role. So, just blank connecting. You can say, you can say something casual. Don't say I'm looking for a job. Just connect. I would say if you're wondering what to say, just don't say anything. Just connect. If they're looking, they'll immediately jump. So it's a great option to look at. Another thing is to connect first with people that you have a lot of others in common with. I know a lot of people will accept right away if you have at least 20 people in common, then the universe is saying maybe we should have more to do with each other, So I would say, make sure that that's another little tip to get more acceptances. The more acceptances you have, the more invites you get. So that's one thing. It's very easy, very low key. And also not having the banner does help with that. Now, here's another thing. Making comments on people's posts who are trying to kind of get out there. That's really nice to do, and people really appreciate it. You can comment and then right away send a DM. Hey, I really love that conversation. Love to chat sometime. You don't have to
Yes.
give an ask. This
Yes.
is another, right? It's a
I can't say yes enough. Like,
Yeah.
if you don't know me at all and you just want to add me, I'll add
you're
anybody.
the best at this.
Yeah, I don't discriminate against like, oh, you've got a green banner up, you're just gonna pitch me after this. Like, usually vendors are the ones pitching, first of all. But
Sure.
like, if you don't know me and you haven't been fortunate enough to run into me physically and like meet me and then say, hey, remember that time we met? And you're just like commenting on some of my stuff, like, this was such a great point, or I found this really helpful. I'm like, gosh. And then you're like, hey, really love the content you put out. I'm in that situation. I found it helpful. I'm like, gosh, thanks. How can I help you? What can I do? Can I do anything? So like, that's a great way to kind of put people on a little bit of a delayed sell, right? Like, if you know, like reverse engineer, if I know I want to connect with Stacy and Stacy's got something that can help me, first, I'm going to comment on her stuff actively for a week and then send her a DM and say, I love what you've been putting out. There's a ton of synergy. I like how you speak.
This is
I find myself.
This is mind-blowing for people. I think people really don't get this. And I understand why. It is not a comfortable spot you're in. You want to accelerate things. You just want to get to the point. You just want to say, I'm looking. Can you introduce me to so-and-so? You have to do it right. And this is where like the dating books come in. You just can't force these things. And if you want it to be real and your life is real and your career is real, so it's worth doing it real, then just you'll do these smaller things and don't kind of come in with a sell right away and just do it in any classy way, self-respecting way that you would do anything else in your life.
And it's hard because sometimes.
Yeah, because hopefully you're going to be in cybersecurity for a long time, right? And so we want to make sure that these interactions that we're having, even if they don't amount to anything right now, or a person can't connect to you or has an opportunity for you right now, you still want to make sure you leave an impression that is one that is rooted in care and service of the other person. Just like Meryl is saying, of like approaching every interaction is, how can I help this person without the tit for tat expectation of there being a payoff, but like knowing that in general, if you go through life that way, in being of service to people, it will come back around to you.
Always. Yeah. I mean, with recruiting, it 100% was that way. I would benefit so much from relationships that I just ended in a classy way or did things the right way years before it came back. We are in a small community, in the cybersecurity community. And that's one of the unique pieces where this conversation intersects with cyber. This is like real life. Like whatever you wouldn't do in real life, don't do here, and whatever you would do in real life, do here, because we're small. We're real. It's real people.
Yeah. Yeah. I was saying there's 5 women in cyber. We all know each other. I'm kidding. There's more, thank God. But no, it's true. And it's hard because, when you're desperate for a job, you're desperate. And that can kind of come off like don't let them know how desperate and needy you are. Like you said, dating. But, sometimes you are desperate and needy. And it's hard to have that restraint. It's hard to like keep your head in those situations. It's hard to keep your head in general. But, again, if you just approach it with like giving kudos and or giving value, that's like most of the people I know that I have long-term collaboration, standing relationships with. Like when I met Mimi, I was like, I am just so in love with the work you do. I just wanted to say, I love everything you do. I admire you so much. Okay, I'll back away. Thank you for listening. Okay, bye. And like Mimi and I didn't need anything from each other originally, but like we just love to give advice and give values and like to each other and bounce off each other. And we have a long-standing collaboration now. So a lot of my business relationships, and I always say this at offsites, I have certain coworkers who like have a business goal, like to get an investor or something, or get a yes on something. And they go into those conversations like all business, right? Just want to talk about the project, want to talk about the end goal, want to talk about what they need. And I'm like, 90% of business happens over not business conversations. Like just how are your kids? How did that go? Oh, we're going to Aspen this year. So fun. Anyway, should we email about that thing? Perfect. I'll follow up with you on Monday. That's the most business that happens for me at offsites. Like, it takes a level of finesse that it's a constant work and development, but it's hard to keep your head, but do your
It's interesting that we've kind of done a lot of discussion today about talking about how to behave, on the outside. Now, and you mentioned something that just triggered one of the next things that we wanted to talk about, and one of the bigger picture pieces, which was, but how do you manage what goes on behind the scenes? So you said, but you are desperate. You really want a job. So What do you do in the space between being laid off and that next role to actually authentically create an attitude in yourself of non-desperation? And so I think that's kind of where, when we were talking a little bit before and about what we would talk about, that's what I see a lot with people, especially with my resume clients. It becomes something where part of that resume writing experience is a deep personal psychological exploration where this is a time for you to really dig into yourself and look at how much you know yourself, getting having deep conversations with friends, but most of all is just really taking care of yourself and making sure that you are militant. Any kind of self-help stuff that you kind of dabbled in before, now is showtime. And if you ever liked self-help and just thought it was a nice added thing in your life, that is the key that will get you through this. So one of those is visualizing yourself working. If you visualize yourself every morning in the job that you want, it's not magic. You're gonna feel more like that. That's how it works. It's science. I don't know if it's
putting
science.
yourself
I
in
think
the
it's science, but it is. It's like if you picture it, then the next time you talk to somebody, you're describing a picture that you're looking at, as opposed to some idea that you can't put your finger on. So really spending that time describing, writing it out, maybe even every morning, maybe it changes from day to day, but write it out, make practices with yourself, have a schedule for yourself. Self-care, when I first learned about it, was all about getting a manicure, being kind to myself.
Yeah, I hate that word because that just feels like one more item I have to put on my to-do list. I don't have time for that. And if I'm taking time for self-care, all the other shit is just piling up and I have twice as much shit to do when I get back. Exactly. I don't want to go to self-care.
No. Self-care is only a yoga class if it's hard for you to go to yoga class. And it's like, meaning self-care is about knowing that you can accomplish things and knowing that you're more than your situation, having the belief that the world turns, that, there's going to be a time when you're going to be employed again, and really standing strong on that front. It's a battle. I mean, I can't put it in other terms.
Put it lightly. There's no nice way to put it. It's disheartening. It's disheartening to feel like you're applying. That's one of the reasons I don't send out mass applications like ever. Like if I apply 100,000 places.
I can share a little about that. That's interesting. Right.
It just defeats my sense of self-worth to feel like I wasn't worth 100,000 jobs. Like I instead prefer the networking approach because I feel like I'm at least driving my own destiny. I'm having a bit of control over what happens to me. That's just me though.
And less is more when it comes to job applications. I mean, every application, if you could calculate how it depletes your energy just to apply for it.
Yeah.
So it's not a light thing. Just because it's easy to in apply or whatever on LinkedIn doesn't mean you should, because you are opening that reservoir of hope that will potentially return disappointment. And so this goes for the networking. It's like, right, how you do one way is how you do everything. So same thing with networking as it is with applying for jobs. Apply for jobs that really, the ones that really make sense. Don't just go applying for anything that might make sense. Make sure you could write yourself a little note. I guess a test for this is if they have a little section where you can say something special to the recruiter. If you can write that with passion, that's a job to apply for. If you're just like, whatever, I'm not doing that, then don't even do it. Don't apply. Does that make sense? If you can't passionately say it,
Yeah, it makes sense. Mimi, I'm curious, how does somebody reconcile that though with the fear of, well, it's a numbers game and I got to get out there and more is better and every application is just another shot.
Some people can't do nothing.
To the idea of like, no, wait, actually, it's going to serve you better in the long run if you set a limit, right? Like you set your boundaries and you do, 5 places that you really love and enjoy and can see yourself working at, and then closing the laptop. Like how does one reconcile that?
That's a great point, because it's really, if you took a high level view of this whole conversation, we're saying the same thing. It's really interesting. And it applies to all these different pieces. So what can you do when you close that book on throwing in the applications? Throwing in the applications is the same thing. I was just throwing up the open to work sign and just thinking that it's owed to you for stuff to happen. The hardest thing in job searching right now is that people are clicking in apply a lot. People are worried a little bit, even if they're applying to jobs that they're not really a fit for. So every recruiter in-house has an exponentially larger, I think it's not the right word. So many applications coming at them. So what you can do is say to yourself, okay, now I've applied to this. I'm in there. Now, by the way, that might not be the best way to go because sometimes friends can introduce you. So if you do all the other parts right, they get a benefit from it if you're not in there. But anyway, let's just say you're in there. Now, what do you do? So you can connect with the recruiters of that company. You can connect with the people who work there. You can engage with their posts of the company's posts. There's a lot of things you can do, but even that I would limit. And what you can do when you start to have that fear impulse that makes you want to do and to just like throw
mass supply
and waste all that really powerful energy, which is your energy to conserve so that when you get to the job interviews, you're full of energy,
right?
Because you've got to be, is to do that battle of staying positive. And you have to do a gratitude journal. You just have to. Before it was cute to do a gratitude journal. Today you have to because if you are focused on the things that you do have, the skills that you have, the reasons why you are a good fit for the job that you want, you'll bring that right into an interview. It's going to be right there with you. So I guess what are some concrete things you can do? Jump on a trampoline. I don't know.
If you have to get the energy out, yeah, go do
lift
anything.
weights. Go scream in the car on the highway. It's so fun to do that. No one will ever. I always look at my phone to make sure I'm not actually on a call.
Like the hot mic.
I scream, and sometimes I scream angry stuff, and sometimes I scream happy stuff, and sometimes I'm just singing really, really, really loud, and like it does real stuff to your energy. So I guess I would say if you're feeling fear, that's your signal to say, I'm in battle right now. There's the fear is seeping in. That means you haven't created protection. So you've got to go and create that protection for yourself, the energy protection, and just make sure that you're doing things that help you feel confident about yourself. So getting a manicure or a massage can help to get you out of your pajamas maybe that first week, and maybe it's a reward, but it's not actually the self-care that we're looking for that's actually going to build you and protect you. The self-care that will build you is mantras and just reminding yourself and doing battle with that negativity.
Yeah. And also too, the really tactical things, right? Like one of the things that can be a huge stressor during a layoff is the sudden uncertainty in finances and your money. And so if that is a black cloud over your head, self-care is addressing it. Self-care is actually opening up your bank accounts, looking at your credit card, and figuring out, okay, how do I make A plus B equals C for the time being? And getting that figured out and out of the way and set on autopilot so then you can fully show up.
By the way, that financial fear, I think, is one of the insidious ways that fear gets in because it's so legitimate, right? But there's nothing wrong with saying, okay, for the next 2 months, I just don't go out to eat that much and I'll not see that dwindle and I will feel not as scared. And you're right. There is a fear of looking at the statements.
Yeah.
There's a fear of your lifestyle not being as fabulous as it was for a little while.
Or if you're a parent, there's a fear that like, how do I take my kids out of baseball and explain to them we can't afford baseball because I lost my job? You feel like you're not serving that provider role that you're supposed to be serving. That's how I would feel anyway, as a mom. I'm also the kind of person who like, if I am laid off and like, I am looking at my financial situation, I can't get a massage or manicure because I'm like, I can't spend that money that I do not any longer have when it needs to go to things like necessities. That would give me additional guilt.
So spending money you don't have is one of the easiest gateways, like we were talking about, for fear and anxiety to seep in. But what happens a lot of times, and especially with women, is we spend and go into debt in order to just soothe ourselves.
Add to cart kind of day. That's what that means.
What?
We're having add to cart kind of days.
Exactly. An add to cart kind of day. Right. And when you're in this space, all of these things this is, it's showtime for all of those things. So, I think a lot about, okay, we're in cybersecurity, what if there's some crazy big cyber attack and I don't have air conditioning, we don't have internet. I think about that sometimes. And then I think, okay, well, where would I first just say, okay, to have some food in my cupboard so that I'm not like starving and then having to go. And I think about like how much fun I could have with my kids trying to figure out how many things we could make out of eggs or flour or whatever. And I know that sounds a little dark, and it probably is a little too dark, but we're in cyber, so
but it's proven, right? Like innovation comes from these sorts of periods of bad times.
Totally.
We've seen that with different cycles, 2008, we've seen it with the pandemic. Like when you have constraints put upon you, whether you like them or not, usually that is the time where you really can flex creative muscles and come up with new ideas and solutions that you would have never even thought of or considered had you not been in this situation.
I agree with that completely.
It's a very fruitful time if you allow it to be.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're 3/4 of the way through the episode.
Oh my
so
gosh.
I do want to get to interview tips. Yeah, because we're having so much fun. Talking about layoffs, which is not fun. I'm sorry.
No,
Sensitivity, Meryl. Sensitivity.
But it is a good but back to that. It can be. I've seen with my own eyes, anecdotally, people are doing great things with their time being looking for work. You do have to be more careful with money. And so I'm not minimizing that. But when you can and when you do, you could find fun things to do. Okay. So
if you see the writing on the wall, if you even have that looming doom feeling, like what if I am inevitably laid off one day, like just prepare now, like set aside money now and have that runway now. And then you won't be in that position. And you might never need it, which would be fabulous. Spend it on a vacation in 10 years.
And prepare mentally
mentally
to not allow yourself to fall into the dark space. Interview tips.
Yeah, but speaking of the mindset, right? One of the biggest things Mimi said that like really changed my brain chemistry last week when we were talking about this concept is she was like, do you realize, because Mimi ends up being the first phone call a lot of people have when they're laid off. They're like, I was just laid off. You get people jobs. Help me. And she's like, we will go through so much work and so much editing and all these like reaching out and setting up of interviews just to have them botch it in the interview. And the thing is people are letting that mindset kind of creep in, and by now you've applied or you've been rejected, and getting rejected from an interview is much worse than getting rejected from just an application, by the way. So Mimi was like, people need to come into those interviews with that energy. Like it's hard to dig deep, but you need to bring it, because you can lose the whole thing in the interview after all that work, climbing up that whole mountain, and then you just fall right back down. So let's talk about that a little bit, because I know the people want to hear your advice on that.
Thank you so much for bringing that up. So that is a piece that comes up a lot for me, and it's hard. It's painful for me to see, because I see both sides. I see hiring managers frustrated because they just want to talk to a peer that they're going to be working with potentially, but they end up talking to somebody who's a little bit all over the place and not coming with their best selves. So that's happening. And then people are going to interviews and they're saying like, I knew what I wanted to say and I knew what I wanted to ask. And then I got
all the words
out the window, and I was prepared and I researched. So I think that really, it's back to what we were saying. I mean, it is about kind of making sure that when you are doing this work while you're looking, that you understand that I had a life coach when I was really young, 23. The thing she said to me was like, everybody knows. Like, if you think you're hiding, like, this like anxiety and fear, and you think you can just like hide it and then like just be something else, everybody feels it. And interviews are the stage that you go onto that like you can't hide. The crazy thing is you have these one-on-ones and you're feeling great, and then you get into an interview and that's where you can't hide. So it's really just an argument for everything we've talked about before, is that if you are prepared mentally, like for the battle that you've been waging up until you walk into the interview, and you're doing it with vigor, you're not going to come to the interview drained and scattered. You're going to remember the reasons you wouldn't want to work there. And when they say, do you have any questions? You're going to remember what to ask to validate if this is what you want. And so what's happening, and one of the best pieces of advice I can give that's practical is when you go into an interview, pretend that you're just seeing if maybe you want to take this person on as a client. Because, yeah, I mean, you have to sell if you want to get the client. But half of the time in that first conversation is like, do I even want this client? Can I really help this client?
Right. If I give you work, will you do it? If I deliver, will you deliver?
Yeah. Or like, is the pain that they're having even something I want to take on? And if you don't know the pain of what they're hiring for, there's a million for every role that you know that's out there. There's a million different pains based on what the company is struggling with. So if you're really not getting a full picture of what the pain is that led to that opening being opened up, and you get off the call just hoping that you got the job, and you don't even understand really like where they're coming from, all that, it could really not be the right job for you. So thinking of it like you're just evaluating a client, you can't be rude, you can't be entitled. Like it's really the perfect model
but you can ask questions. And that's kind of, changes the dynamic. Because often when we show up in interviews, the unwritten expectation is that we come in, we sit there, we wait for them to ask us questions. And only when they turn the tables for us at the end do we then ask the questions. But if this is a client, now you're acknowledging your role in the situation and your responsibility to just as much put questions out there and clarify and get information from them as they are, getting information from you.
Yeah. Exactly. And I want to caution, not challenging, mean questions, but deep, probing, thoughtful questions. There is science, and I wish I had the actual article to prove this, but that questions actually make people feel more connected to you. The questions, good questions, trigger your subconscious to connect with who you're talking to.
Well, and keep in mind, the adage, right, is people love to talk. They love to talk about themselves. And if they're hiring, they want to talk about the project and themselves. So, like, the more you let them talk in your interview, probably the better. They'll be like, that was a great interview. I got so much information now.
By the way,
I felt so good.
If you're not doing that, you're buying into a total false narrative of like, they have the power because they have the job and the open role. And you don't have the power because you're looking. But it's totally not true. They have an open role because something's going on.
They have a need. They have a gap.
Yeah, something serious is going on there. And like, you might find that out in that conversation and actually feel compassion for the person who's interviewing you and understand what they're going through and not have any intimidation. You might get there, and you could very well get there. It's very likely.
So I'm sure Stacey's going to riff off this because she just went through this whole dog and pony show with the interviews and stuff. But like when I am interviewing for new jobs, like I treat it like a project that I'm qualifying. Like I'm like, I don't necessarily know if I want to come help you with your project. Like I'm like, so some of the objective questions I ask that are not rude, but are qualifying are like, what's the turnover been like? What are the obstacles you've experienced with this project? Like, what is the limitation? Is it a leadership thing, a budget thing, a tech stack thing, an expertise thing? And I want to make sure that I'm not just walking into a situation where I have to fight an uphill battle. No one's going to give me what I want. The project's going to fail. Then I'm going to be potentially losing my job again because this project was kind of doomed and just no one told me because today we're campaigning, so our best foot's up front, but tomorrow you voted for us and now we're in office, So I ask these questions and I'm like, tell me about your project. Tell me about your turnover. Tell me about, in your department, if I wanted to do this, or if I advocated for this, or if I identified this, how would that go for me? How realistic is that? And I want to know as an engineer, how hard my job is actually going to be.
Yeah. You can ask questions also about like, what does success look like?
Yeah. How do you track it?
Oh my God, that's going to tell you so much about how much hell you're going to experience.
Exactly. Like if they can't answer that question, like, do you seriously want to be working for them? Because if they can't answer it today before you're even working for them, then once you're in there and you're trying to grow your career and move towards promotion and stuff like that, if they can't articulate what it even looks like and what you need to achieve in order to advance, like it's not going to get any better once you're on the inside. And
they're depending on you to make it better. And now that's your job instead of the other job.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I definitely I went through this a bit, and one of my regrets from a previous cycle of going through all of this was not asking enough questions, not requesting of them additional interviews, right? Like, there was a place where they were good and happy with 1 30-minute interview, and in hindsight, I should have asked to talk with more people on the team. Because if I had talked with other people on the team, I can't predict, what may or may not have happened, but I know either way, I would have had a lot more information that, potentially could have, changed my trajectory. Right. And exactly what Meryl said of like, yeah, the first goal is that people get hung up on is just getting reemployed, right? But do you truly want to be reemployed at a, toxic, terrible, dysfunctional workplace that, you might end up being put into this exact situation again a couple months later? Or do you want to, play the long game and, approach it with that mindset of I'm not going for just any job. I am going for the right job. I am going for the opportunity that's going to give me longevity and growth and, a lot more stability and whatnot.
Yeah, I always ask about expectations. Like, I'm like, is this like an open playing field? Like, I can build my own thing, or like, am I inheriting something partially built by someone else? I feel like, yeah, it's really open. It's like whatever you want it to be. I'm like, so what? What are the expectations? Yeah, it's whatever you want it to be. Like, you can come in and just immediately add value everywhere. I'm like, that tells me that like I'm gonna put out some documents and maybe impress people in my first month.
You are a mess, right?
Yeah, we don't know what we're doing. I don't know what we're doing. I'm just supposed to execute your project. You're supposed to define it for me. I'm not defining it and then executing it. How do I know that's what you want? Like that's a big red flag to me as an architect, for sure.
By the way, red flags, that's a really good one to think about too, because when you're looking and you're unemployed, and so you're looking after a layoff, one of the things you can get overly fixated on is certain red flags that are universal, but not all red flags are red flags for everybody. And this is a good dating one. I have ADHD, so my brain works in a certain way. And there are some forms of crazy that I love, and that actually I'm less successful when that form of crazy isn't present, and that most people don't like. And so knowing yourself, it's a really good plug. By the way, I will plug doing like a Gallup personality strengths finder test. And if anybody does that and wants to do a quick 15-minute free session with me on the results, happy to do it.
What the hell is that? There's another personality test I haven't taken. I know my lens. I know my MBTI. I know my Enneagram. This is BS.
It's a good one. It's a good one. If you have any of them, I'd be happy to, take a talk, take a few minutes with you. But this Gallup Strengths Finder, what I like about it is that it actually shows you where you're going to be the most enlivened. So you can be good at a lot of things if you're a high performer, but there's going to be certain things that are present in jobs where you don't even feel like you should be getting paid because it's so much fun. And to have a few of those things in your job is really, really nice. And so you can actually look for those things. Yeah. And your strength thing that invigorates you could be a total drainer for someone else.
Exactly.
So there are things that are talked about publicly as being like universal red flags that I sometimes take issue with, because I'm like, look, a company that's a mess and has like no idea what they're doing, but like it's the kind of mess that you know how to clean up. That's an awesome job.
Yeah. So it's immediate value you can add, obviously.
Exactly. Yeah. So I would encourage people to, I know I've seen people say this. So they'll say, oh, but that was scary. And I'm like, well, you've done that before. You've actually cleaned up that specific type of mess before. Do you not want to do that? Or are you just scared, but you may be the right person for this? And so that's a deeper, it's always like comes back to knowing yourself and really taking that time to get real about all this. But anyway, it's just a little plug that sometimes red flags aren't always like a stop. It's a stop and think.
I have a little example of this, and hopefully my mom doesn't mind me sharing it publicly. But so my mom has been a property manager and been in real estate for many, many years. And last year she decided that, she was burnt out and she wanted to do something different. And she's at a point in her life where she doesn't have to work. And so she decided that she was going to go be a school lunch lady because she loves cooking and thought it would just be, something interesting, different, very predictable, and not as much drama as you can imagine in real estate and everything you see on HGTV, right?
It does sound like that.
But sure. I kid you not, couple months in, and she is like, I am bored, I am over this, and so it just kind of goes to show that, like, being honest with yourself about the environments that you thrive in and that give you energy in life, right?
That's
like they're not going to be the same person by person. And it's totally okay to make a change that you think is going to help you, or put you in a position you thought that it was what you wanted, and then decide that's not it, and actually you need a little bit more, and then change again, because guess what, she's moving back into a property management position, with a better better fit and everything like that too. So
I can't tell you how many people say they want stability after a layoff, and how many of those people are actually just such like movers and shakers that what stability. So you want to like be at one of these big monster companies and just have somebody feed you activities to do. That's really
we have to move into final takeaways because we are really over time, but
we are over time.
But no, it's true. I have a friend who is like a mover and a shaker like me, like big on public speaking, big on, content creation, giving back, works for a very front-facing company who does a lot of public speaking and stuff. And she was like, I told my supervisor the other day, I think I'm done with my overachieving era. Like, no matter how much I overachieve and give back, like I'm still at the same spot. And like, I don't care to move positions to a new company and start over. So I think I'm just I told him, do my work. I'm going to do my work and do my good work performance and spend the bulk of my energy on the things that fill me up outside of work. I want to take up new skills. I want to date, things like that. So that's the era I'm in now. And I'm like, you know what? Power to you, girl, for knowing.
It's great.
Someone else.
Your job doesn't have to fulfill. Your job doesn't have to fulfill every part of you at all.
Yeah. Okay. Final takeaways for the audience. We're going to wrap this up rather quickly. First off, I just want to thank you all so much for joining us. And if you stuck around, thank you so much. We're probably going to release this as 2 half-hour episodes but I did want it to go as long as it needed it to, because there is so much good layoff information in here, and we wanted Mimi to give all the gold that she could to you guys. So I really appreciate you sticking around. Please, if you love the content, like, share, or subscribe. It's absolutely free and the #1 way you can support us. And if not, come at me in the comments, because I'll take the engagement, and I'm also happy to improve. We want to create content you guys want to see and hear. So Mimi, please tell people where they can find you and all about your special LinkedIn audit offering that we'll get them a link to after.
Okay, great. So I'm always on LinkedIn. So that is literally the best place to find me. I have a little website somewhere floating around that's getting revamped, but find me on LinkedIn, Mimi Gross. And I do have, let's see, we'll share the link with the people who attend. I think there's a way to do that for a 15-minute free LinkedIn profile, LinkedIn audit, or I'm happy to do like a quick resume, high level, quick shot too. So I do resume writing and rewrites and career branding. So if you're having trouble telling your story succinctly, we can work on that.
Awesome.
And I think our takeaway
Don't sleep on that out there.
Storytelling is a skill. Be able to tell your own story. If you can't tell your own story, you have no business telling someone else's. Anyway, thank you so much for sticking on for another episode of Cyber Queens. We will see you next week. We wish you a happy weekend. We will see you next time. Bye.
Bye.